Hi there, and welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Podcast. My name is Patrick Francie, and I am your host, and I want to begin by saying thank you for listening. On this show, I am having conversations with seemingly ordinary individuals who have achieved some amazing and extraordinary results in both their life and business. My intention is to inspire and help you learn and grow by having my guests share their journey of how they face and overcome their challenges, but also how they celebrate their many wins. And now, let's get on with this show and have a conversation with today's guest. My guest today, Vince Shorb, is one of the country's leading advocates for promoting financial wellness and a thought leader in teaching and scaling financial education programming. After spending 15 years in financial services working one-on-one with more than 20,000 people, he founded the National Financial Educators Council, which is an organization dedicated to combating the financial illiteracy epidemic. He is the current CEO of the NFEC and is an accredited company and a certified B Corporation. Vince's mission is to create a world where people are informed to make qualified financial decisions and confidently take effective financial action that best helps them meet their basic human needs while moving toward fulfilling their personal, family, and global community goals. Shorb has led the NFEC in the development of 2,500 financial education programs and more than 80 financial literacy assets and financial education standards that guide the industry. His focus is on mobilizing and developing community champions and empowering them with the resources, knowledge, and processes they need to help their communities' citizens work toward financial self-sufficiency and security. And in this conversation, Vince goes down a path of sharing insights and his experience on his journey to supporting thousands of people in having financial security, certainty, and ultimately working towards financial freedom. Without any further delay, let's get this show started. Vince Shorb, welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, great to be here.
So Vince, let's kick it off. You've got a great bio, great background, but for our listeners, I like to open always with the question of when somebody runs into you and says, Vince, what do you do? What's your answer to that question?
I say I'm an advocate for promoting personal finance education, really wanting to empower youth in this next generation so they can make decisions that will put them in a better, more secure position and help those adults as well that are struggling and have had issues navigate that so they can start to live that life that they dreamed about. So really, my life is centered around economic empowerment through financial education, really wanting to bring that to serve others.
So it's such a great topic. My sense of it in just what I do as well within the Real Estate Investment Network, within the podcast, within the coaching programs that we do, I don't want to say I'm surprised, but there is a part of it where you look and see just the lack or the gap that is left in people's general financial education. So I'm assuming that you recognize that gap over the years and you said, something I want to step up and be able to fill it, guide people in having some better understanding of financing is, I don't know if I'm doing it justice saying that, but is that kind of where you entered the game?
It was, I always had a passion at a young age about money, started investing and had a real passion for saving, working for money. And I was always centered on that, starting businesses. But you're exactly right. Where the flame to that fire really started to grow when I was in the mortgage industry, right? And this was going back a few decades ago. But I would see people, I'd help them out, lower their rate, consolidate debt, save them a couple thousand a month, and 4 or 5 months later, they'd be back, hey, I need another 50 grand. And so I started to feel like I'm just putting Band-Aids on these individuals instead of really helping them with their finances. And after years in that field, I left and started the National Financial Educators Council. And really I wanted to proactively help people address the behavior aspects of finance, the knowledge gaps in finance that you mentioned, and just help them develop an overall plan that can guide them to better decisions. When we originally founded, I was stressed out by working with adults just because I saw so many people in very hard situations. I had people crying on the phone, and it was devastating to hear some of their stories. So when we started, we were focused just on youth. After a few years of that, just people started asking us, hey, we have adult people that need your support as well. And we grew back into that adult population. Now we really serve all ages with our team of certified educators and coaches across the country and in 70 countries as well.
So tell me a little bit about what the business is and what the program is, what's it evolved to, and how do you serve these clients? Is this a coaching environment that you've put them in? Is this an education in terms of books or all of the above? Give me some insights into why would I contact you, number one? How do I find out that, oh, if I've got some financial challenges or I just want to improve my education, I'm reaching out to you, or am I reaching out to you in support of fighting some fires? How do we track you down, or how do we come across your team?
Yeah, great question. That's really evolved over the years. When we started, we were boots on the ground delivering financial education and coaching to end users that wanted to improve their financial situation, right? So it was individuals would come to us and organizations would come to us and say, hey, we want you to teach our individuals about money, investing, whatever topics they were interested in to help them work toward a greater financial wellness. We reached a point about 3 years in, we started to do big events, 1,000 plus person attendees, celebrity sports stars. And we reached a point where I was living off all the hotel shampoos because I was never home, traveling a lot. And for us to scale, we started to train educators and coaches that can serve their individual communities. So now our model is really empowering these entrepreneurs and these that come from various backgrounds, some from financial services, some just entrepreneurs wanting to start a financial wellness practice, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, teachers, really a very diverse background of individuals with one common goal. How do I help my community work toward greater financial wellness? So we provide them the training to do so effectively, plus all the resources. So all the processes, systems, plans that we built out when we were actually boots on the ground, we share with them so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if they need materials to teach, if they need registration processes, if they need business models of pricing, invoicing, we provide them really everything that they need to start, execute, and really run a professional level financial wellness initiative. And our vision really is to continue. We're in all 50 states as well. We're currently building out our state chapters. We're launching our fourth and fifth state here in the U.S. here in January, our sixth and seventh state in April. And really these state chapters are now hubs where these local educators can all group and really support the community in one very targeted and planned fashion. So that's our vision over the next 3 years, is really to build out every state so we can continue to serve people in the most effective way possible.
So this is such an interesting model, and I want to just unpack it a little bit. Don't intend to spend a bunch of time here, but I find it quite fascinating in what you're doing. So if you're now launching into states, so within that state, that would be a hub. And then within there are cities, let's say there's 5, 7, 10 cities within that state that would actually provide the service. Am I hearing it the right way, Vince?
Exactly. And what we found is, every state here has different socioeconomic statuses. They have different financial education regulations in schools. Most in the U.S., they don't have financial education requirements in U.S. schools. I know very similar in Canada. It's not really required across the board. So we're really trying to address the specific needs. I always operate on the important and urgent area. So what's most important and urgent? And the states give us a way to really do so, identify, hey, what's most important and urgent that needs our attention in the states. So maybe there's a state with legislation pending, right? An important and urgent thing that we may help address is to advocate to get that legislation through that requires schools to teach personal finance. Maybe in another state, hey, they're having a major housing insecurity problem, so we'll target those specific areas. So it really gives us a way to segment the country and target the most urgent things required by that individual state.
That's fantastic. So when you're in this particular model that you're talking about, you're kind of a coach to coaches scenario. Would you Would you present this as a franchise opportunity for somebody that says, you know, something, I see a gap, it's something that I can be really passionate about, something I've gotten good at myself, I want to be able to share the word and then be able to tap into what you guys provide in terms of resources and experience and then grow a business model from that? Is that, am I hearing this the right way, Vince? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but that's kind of how I'm hearing it.
No, great question. And it's a licensing model, so similar.
Yeah.
It's just it's the licensing model as opposed to a franchise model. We're providing them a lot of the resources, systems, and processes a franchise would, but we allow them the freedom to promote their brand. And really, that came about when we started. We did not want to build curriculum. We did not want to, create all these processes, a system. We wanted to come in, and I wanted to come in, speak, share my passion, empower people, be in front of people, and really get them motivated. But what had to happen is there was nobody sharing their information. They said, okay, hey, you can use our information, but it has to be with our logo, our name, and under our umbrella, right? So our goal was to give people the freedom to use their own brand. So this is very popular with financial services. They don't want to use the NFEC brand. They want to use their brand because that's where everybody knows them as. And we work with top colleges, financial service institutions, so forth that want that. Now, so from the entrepreneur side, a lot of them say, hey, we want to use the NFEC branded materials because that elevates us. We're the only accredited organization in our vertical in the US. So that's a big standout. So that we're helping them build their brand through affiliation with us. And especially when they're starting out, it's important. So we wanted to give them that flexibility. But the overall model is kind of similar. Hey, we want to provide them things that they don't have to reinvest time and money into so that they can get out there and serve their community effectively without going through that decade of development that we did.
Wow, I love it. Very, very cool. So any plans on coming to this side of the border, a little bit of Canada stuff? If we've got some listeners in Canada, should they be reaching out going, hey, I'll put up my hand. I'm interested in what you're doing. Is that a possibility?
We are there. We have educators there. It's just our material is not Canadian specific.
Yep.
One of our board of advisors just moved up to Quebec, going to Quebec College up there. And he just turned 18. He just graduated. He's going to the college there. So he's talking with us already about translating it into French, which is, I know, a requirement there. But we have certified educators across Canada as well. It's just the interesting thing is the teaching methodologies, right? How we can teach and convey information. Those are really international best practices, right? There's ways to teach that are research-based, ways to convey information, ways to manage classrooms that will work really across all international lines. But the content knowledge, meaning credit, budget, retirement systems, et cetera, that's typically country specific. Now, there's a lot of similarities with US and Canada. A lot of people use our material there, but it doesn't have that exact nuance yet. But we are talking to Derek Constantini, our advisory board member. He's already talking about that and trying to bring that there. Also, we're partnering with the basketball league. They just took over the a Canadian basketball league up there and to launch an initiative. We've been partnered with them for 5 years. So they're knocking on the door of, hey, let's get this Canadian material done. So I'm hoping to be up there, hoping to meet you up in Vancouver and doing some neat things up there. But yeah, that is the plan.
Well, fantastic. If you're in Vancouver, definitely give me a call. Now, years ago, I had a guest who became a friend of mine, but Nancy Phillips, and she was, taught financial, I don't know if you call it literacy, but she taught finance and was really focused on supporting kids. It was called the Well Away at the time. And although that's morphed and gone on to different things, her own research and her own data back then, I recall, was just how, and it's such an area of interest for me in terms of the topic because of the lack of education for many people, and many families, and the gap is often quite surprising when you see significant, couples. So one spouse or the other is kind of takes the reins and the other doesn't communicate. They don't have conversations about money around the kitchen table, and they would not even think about having conversations necessarily with their kids. So of course, generationally, what happens? Their struggling financially, or they're not understanding what's going on with their own budgets, for example. They're feeling pressure, but they don't want to talk about their kids and that with it, talk about it around their children. So their children don't gain anything from it. Now, I don't know where to go with that other than, has that been part of your experience when you're going through this education of people around finance? Are these some of the gaps that you're filling? Is this some of the insights that you're providing with clients?
Definitely. I think, really where we take a holistic approach to financial wellness. Let's take the example you were talking about with couples that don't communicate together. Very common. I'll share it. I don't want to say funny story, but interesting story of a mistake we made early on when I first founded the company. We were doing some events that had parents there. Kids weren't there present, but it was really teaching parents how to communicate with their kids about money. And one of the games I played, and I would never do that today, so don't duplicate it. It was a mistake on my part, but hopefully it's a learning experience. Is when we took two parents up there and we sat them back to back, married couple, and we said, write down your top 10 goals, right? And they wrote their top 10 goals. And when we read them to the class, they were completely different. Top 10 financial goals, completely different. I forget what the guys was like, travel and do all this stuff. And the wives was they take care of their mom and all that. And they had no idea. And in that situation I put them in caused stress, caused, problems there. And I learned the hard way there, and it was a mistake on my part. But those are some of the things we make sure we train our coaches, and especially when you're working with couples, you need to make sure to enter conversations a certain way, tackle these subjects. A lot of what we're doing as coaches when it comes to financially coaching couples, you do have that one person that's, hey, let's go tackle this, let's do this. The other person's like, I don't want to deal with it, right? So it is a tough challenge when you're working with couples there, and a lot of the training is centered around that. As far as parents and their children, I think there's a ton of opportunity there for parents to leverage teachable moments to empower their kids. This is a big thing we train about is, hey, how do we train parents on how to leverage these moments, right? There's daily things that we're doing financially, even if it's something as simple as shopping, going to the store. Why am I picking this soup over this one, right? And we can get into the cost per ounce, etc. We could teach them things around the house. I'm a big fan of having games around the homes. One in particular we like doing is a utility bill challenge, where they'll sit down with their kid on any utility bill. Let's say it's electricity. They'll show them, hey, what the bill was over the year, what it was last year. And we'll say, make a challenge. Hey, if we can lower this by 10% here this coming month compared to last year, we'll do something as a family together, right? And it's kind of funny because if there's a good enough prize at the end, the kids are reminding the parents, hey, Mom, why are you leaving that on? Right? So there's some interesting things that parents can do. And they don't have to sit down and educate them, even though it's a good thing to do. The other thing we definitely encourage is a chore system within the household. So kids are learning that work equates to the ability to earn money, and having them contribute toward household bills at a young age. So it's like training wheels. So when they're on their own, they know there's a lot of bills that are from different areas and they're exposed to them. And of course, always building the habit of savings at a young age. So again, from that holistic perspective, when we teach an individual, we're not just thinking about them, we're thinking about, hey, their partners, their kids. In addition, we also think about their adult family members that may need some support at the end, and starting that conversation and planning early. So that's right along the lines of what you said, and that's how we tackle financial education.
I love that part of it, and something that you said around the exercise that you gave couples early on, and you kind of look at it going, it probably wasn't the best idea, but it's interesting around money and the triggers or the charges around money and how it impacts different, how it impacts people. And again, it's a, familial in that, the generation, it is born from our parents and their parents and the grandparents, and it goes on and on. It's often generational, and it goes down where we break down in those conversations. So to your point, back to back, what is your financial thoughts, goals, outcomes? it becomes a values conversation around money. What are your values? I mean, this is really common. The husband's looking at trips and business and a new suit and a briefcase, and you got a couple in a mall. That's what he's looking at, and maybe bank rates, and she's looking at what's in the best interest of the kids, and what is what's the sales on food, and what should I do for my my mother or my mother-in-law. Very, very different often in terms of values. And in a lot of the work that we've done over the years, where in this year for 2024, my wife Stephanie and I, in the programs and the coaching that we do, is clarity equals velocity is our phrase, right? And the clarity comes in being able to have these kinds of conversations and actually speak and have, in this case, a financial conversation about what are your values, what is important to you, where do we align as a couple, and where don't we align, and be okay with, okay, we don't align there. So is there a fix? Is there something, I don't want to call it a compromise, but how do we come to some relationships knowing that one of your highest values is X and one of my highest values is Y? They're not the same, but that doesn't mean that they can't exist together. And that comes from having great communication and great conversations. And I think the most important part of this, especially when it comes to family, Vince, is that, you hit it on, is that being able to have these conversations with your kids so that you actually break that cycle of financial conversation and financial literacy. So I love that body of work that you're doing. It really is exciting. I'm always really interested in that kind of a program where you're bringing families together, because of course it is often what breaks families apart is these difficult financial situations and conversations.
Let me just jump in. That clarity equals velocity. Mm-hmm. I love that, not only from a personal finance perspective, having a plan so you're making decisions in alignment and you're not pausing, what should I do? Also from a business standpoint, I think times in business, I feel like I'm not clear on an objective. It takes me longer because I'm okay, which way do I go? Once it's clear, you get that velocity. So I really like that phrase.
Yeah, and like I say, we've made it our theme this year, and it changes how you actually enter conversations, or maybe conversations that you want to put off, not for any reason, maybe just procrastinating, being lazy, whatever, or maybe, this is one of those uncomfortable conversations that I'd rather, put off till later. But what it does slow down is it makes it a little sticky. It makes it more difficult. And sometimes it's not even that, sometimes what it is that I'm discovering as we work with people is that they're not even clear what they want. They don't know. They don't actually have a vision. And if you were to say to somebody, well, give me a financial goal, they're actually a little bit shy about putting any kind of number out there that's meaningful, or that if their comfort zone is, I want to generate an income of $100,000 a year and they're making 70, to say I make $100,000 a year is a big stretch, almost embarrassing or uncomfortable, like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And, take that and say, well, I'm making $100,000 a year and I intend to make $1 million a year. That's such a stretch that people have actually difficulty wrapping their mind around that. And this all comes back to the breakdown of, number one, goals, but number two is, the financial understanding of the ability to do that, or understanding there is a path to do that when you have the education and the support that you're talking about. Am I in alignment with with what your philosophy around stuff is, Vince?
Definitely, yeah. And I think I agree with you 100% on, oftentimes people don't want to establish a goal. We always say, hey, you can change the goal, right? Hey, it's a goal for now. I know my net worth goals have changed over the years because inflation, other things have changed, added risk and so forth. So I always tell people, hey, set something that's not set in stone. You can reevaluate this yearly and make adjustments to it. But just getting them to put something on paper, I think, is the big challenge, where, like you said, their income $70,000, that $100,000, they don't know the plan to do so, but just getting something down, your mind starts to work toward things. I think that's a good first step. And then giving them the freedom on an annual basis, or whenever, quarterly basis, like I do, is, hey, is this still in alignment? Is this still meeting your needs? Has anything changed? I think a lot of people say, hey, this is my goal now, but I don't know who I'm going to be in 5 years. I don't know what my goals and dreams are going to be. I don't know how my kid's going to be doing. I don't know if they're going to go to college. There's a lot of variables when it comes to personal finance. Am I going to take care of my grandfather, or is he going to be okay, right? There's a lot of variables when it comes to money. We have the economy, we have the markets, we have individual choice, we have family, add a kid. That changes your outlook quite a bit. So with all those variables, I think it's hard for people to define where they want to go financially oftentimes. So what we try to do, our coaches try to do is, hey, break that down. What you're feeling now, let's get this goal on paper. Things may change. We're going to have this discussion on an annual, semi-annual basis, depending on the client. And this way, they feel it's getting them that forward progress, something to shoot for. All the decisions the coach is helping them work toward are focused on those goals that they list. And then when it comes to check-in time, then they can reevaluate. Also, there's times that you just need to reevaluate. Life events come up, right? Could be a positive one where they had a bonus at work, or they got a new job opportunity, or it could be a negative one where they got laid off, or maybe the market took a dump and their 401k went down. But those check-in marks too, it's important to reevaluate the goals. So it's as you know, in the content development space, you're never finished. There's always improvements, tweaks, modifications. Same
Yes.
thing with goals, and it's just getting people comfortable with, hey, establishing a end, but flexible enough to roll with the punches so that they don't get beat down. Oh, my income just dropped from $100,000 to 50 grand, but I still want that $150,000 a year job. Now I'm so much further away. It's getting them to be able to roll with those punches and fight through those things as well. And again, I think the challenges with personal finance, even business, it's things come up, things change, they're outside of our control, and we need to adapt.
So, well, speaking of which, there's a lot of things outside of our control, these days, 4 years later, after, major lockdowns and major economic shutdowns and lockdowns, we're now into a whole different global macro picture, potential wars all over the place. Of course, central banks doing all the things that they did. Have you seen a rise? I'm assuming yes, but have you seen an increase in the challenges that people are facing where they do need some strong financial guidance? And I know that you're not there to give advice, you're there to educate in terms of finance. How do you address, or how do you see what's happening economically today, Vince? Even how do you view it through your own lens as being somebody who's got expertise in investment and in finance? How are you looking at the world, and how are you passing that on to your coaches and your end user clients?
Yeah, I'm in a fortunate position where I get a lot of firsthand knowledge from people. So our educators, our coaches that are out there serving these various communities share with us the challenges they're facing. Also, whenever I'm out, I'm talking to the Uber driver, the person, the waitress, and the people that are when I'm interacting, guys at the gym, right, about money and finance, just so I can get a feel of what's out there.
Yep.
And just with all the coach educators, I'm sensing that people are really struggling right now. They're seeing their bank account, their savings account dwindle down. They're seeing their credit card go up, right? Their debt load increase. And I think just this wear and tear of inflation and this printing money that caused all these people to really be excited when the $1,000 checks were coming to them here in the U.S. They sent them COVID checks, but now they're experiencing a lot more pain, and it's just they feel like it's a constant grind, right? They just can't get ahead. I'm working as hard as I was. They're picking up second jobs as Uber drivers, etc. They just can't get ahead, and it's scary. I've been in that situation before in my life several times, and it's never a good feeling. And really, the challenges, oftentimes when people are in that state, they don't want to face things directly because it causes stress. It causes emotional strain. They're reminded of their past, what they consider mentally failures. I don't consider it failures, but their past mistakes and so forth. So oftentimes they want to put that in the back of mind and don't think about it, right? I'm just going to continue to go through. I don't want to think about my credit card because I made a dumb decision here, or, hey, I made this car purchase and it was dumb, and so I'm feeling the pain now. And they don't want to address some of those things. So a big thing is getting people to a stage where they're willing to face those challenges head on, and leave that past behind, and move forward with the situation they're presented now. So with education and coaching, we're really trying to say, hey, whatever happened in the past, those are learning experiences, but what we're addressing is here and now. What's your financial situation now? What habits do you have now? And how can we address that moving forward? So we try to, have them address the past by, hey, just, saying whatever happened, acknowledge it, but we are here now. And I think that's a big challenge to get people to that point. There's a model out there called the trans-theoretical model of change. I just call it stages of change, which basically say that people can live in one of these 5 stages for ongoing period. The earlier stages are what you mentioned, the procrastination stage. The even before that is the I don't want to face it stage. Then it's procrastination stage. Then it's the action phase, and then it goes through the maintenance after they've made positive behavior changes. And a lot about money is behavioral, so that's why we look at that model. But if we're trying to educate a class of people that are in some of that lower stage of change, where maybe they just feel so beat up about money, so tired, they don't want to think about it because it causes stress, we can actually do more harm than good as an educator. So if it's like a mandated class where they're saying everybody has to go learn about money for adults, and if they've been, in a kind of experienced bad situations, it could do more harm than good. So we have to do very light education, and very, the goal is to motivate them up the stage of change model so that we can actually get them to a point where they can take positive action. So that's a challenge with teaching adults. With kids, the reason I love working with kids and teens, we're in a position to shape them before they've gotten beat up, before they've had those experiences of worrying about a place to sleep or those things. And we have a lot of opportunity to help them proactively avoid challenges. I always say it's a lot easier to walk around a big pit than climb yourself out of a big pit. And I think that's the opportunity we have with you. So that's why a big focus of what we do is advocacy for parents to teach kids about money, and also schools to teach kids about money. This way, when we start to teach them as adults, we're working on a good platform of hopefully not major challenges that can help them elevate them faster.
When just kind of off topic and back on, we'll slide back into it. But, when you look at where you are today, I mean, I often ask the question, is entrepreneurship, is it nature or is it nurture? So when you find yourself where you are today and you look in your past, as a kid growing up, do you start to see where this was in fact part of your life as a young man growing up, part of your family? How did you get on your entrepreneurial journey and get to where you are today? What led you down this path? Was it something that happened as a young man or you're on what I often have is entrepreneurial accidents? But what was it for you, Vince?
Yeah, I think I realized at a young age the importance of money in people's lives, and how it impacted the loved ones around me. And I always just wanted to be in a position to be able to take care of them from that sense. So I was always entrepreneurial, collecting cans, recycling, selling lizards at school. I got busted. I had to run a black market lizard selling arena in second, third grade. Baseball card buying, selling, that stuff. It graduated into, me selling supplements and when I was 15, 16, me getting into these small ventures. I want to say no huge successes, but there were learning experiences, right? I was always in that. Also, my grandfather on my dad's side, very entrepreneurial, real estate investor, he had his own business on the engineering side. So I was always interested in that. So I think it was part of both, which is nature, just my interest in that, but also nurture because I had people around, and I also had different influences as far as money. As far as, hey, some of my family were risk adverse, others were very frugal, others were, hey, I'm going to take that risk, I see the payoff. So I had a lot of diverse influences there, which I think was very good, that helped to build that entrepreneurial skill set. So I would say, I don't know if I'd put it at 50-50 exactly, but I think I was self-motivated. But I think those people in my environment around me helped really shape and gave me that confidence to continue that momentum.
Was there a fork in the road moment for you along the way? When we think about sometimes our journeys and how we get to where we go, if you reflect back, like consider, for example, even in the work that you do, I mean, I'm sure you've witnessed fork in the road moments where through your education and coaching and the work that you and your team have done, you've seen individuals who have, they have a choice. I can take this path or I can go this path. I can engage and embrace the education that I've been provided. And they go off on that journey, and that's their fork in the road moment, which is actually changing their life forever. It really does change. When you look at your own career, your own journey, is there a fork in the road moment that you've had along the way, financially or entrepreneurial or whatever it might be, that really this was a moment in time that took me in a direction that, got me where I reflect and go, that's why I'm here. That's one of the things that, showed up for me. Anything in that space at all, Vince?
Definitely. I think there's two key ones. One, I would say, took me the wrong direction. Another took me the right direction. The one that took me the wrong direction was going to college. I think it was a complete waste of my time, complete waste of my energy. I was working full time the whole time I did. I had side businesses, and I stopped my side businesses to focus on completing school. I kept working full time, but I stopped my side businesses because I wanted the security of a piece of paper. I learned very little in college. I had maybe a handful of decent professors where I went to class. The other ones, I just went to get a C, got my points there, and left, right? Tore up my paper when I was done because I knew it was a complete waste of my time, but I was so close. I'm like, I got to finish this. I think that took me away from my entrepreneurial mindset. I think I was just, everybody from elementary school on, let's go to college, go to college, go to college. Like, why? I don't need to, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm not going to be an architect. I like the sales side. I like the entrepreneurship side. I like the making deal side. That wasn't taught in school. Even the classes I did, they were taught by people that weren't successful in that space. One was studying real estate development. First day of class, I asked the professor, how did you do? Tell us about some of your deals. And he did one deal. He went bankrupt, and now he's a teacher, right? So I've learned, I'm not going to listen to this guy. I'll take it with a grain of salt. I'll just complete the class. So that was my path. I went the wrong way. I think that was completely for me. For some people, it's perfect, right? If you're going to be engineer, architect, or a doctor, you need that, right? I didn't. It was a waste of time, money, and energy. The one where I took a right turn was approaching the end of my financial service time. I spent about 15 years in that space. And I was just feeling like I was putting Band-Aids on people. And I went up to Montana. My folks live up in Montana, Trigo, Montana, beautiful area. And I went up and visited them. And my mom said, I told her kind of, hey, I'm at a really transition point. And she said, you always talked about, teaching people about money and how much you wish you learned about that when you were young. And we started talking. And I remember early on, I started buying real estate in my teenage years. I was like, okay, the thing I liked most about those years, not only buying the real estate, was helping my friends out, helping my parents' friends out. They would come to me with questions. People, double my age, coming to me with questions, just because they saw I had success. And so that was an eye opener. I'm like, you know what, you're right. And that's where the shift, that's the pathway I'm on right now, is a lot due to that conversation with my mom, and just reminding me of really a core value I had, which was educating and empowering people, and my interest in finance. And, I really think this is my life's mission. This is why I'm here. This is what I want to bring and how I want to serve the community. And I enjoy what I do. And I think that was a great pathway for me to take. I'm just glad we had that conversation, and she helped guide me to the point I'm at right now.
It's so interesting, isn't it? When you find a model, if you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter, even if you're career oriented, when you find that role that you play that is really part of your mission, your life's purpose, if you will, where you get to be a contribution, you get to make a difference in other people's lives, and you get to get paid for it. You get to be paid for it. And there is huge value in what you do, and you get not only a huge return on your investment of time and energy in what you do, the service that you're providing or the product, whatever way you want to look at it, provides an amazing return on the investment of the individual that's engaging with you on it. And it's such a I mean, it's a pretty perfect scenario. That's what I often feel like in what we're doing. You know, my wife and I have been doing for many, many years, and that is, you know, living our purpose, which is to be a contribution. We know that that's what lights us up, and what gets us out of bed in the morning is being able to be that contribution. And it is pretty impactful when you live your life from that place. So good for you. I love it. Vince, when you look at your clients, you know, is there I don't know if what the exact question would be, but are there certain patterns that, you know, if you're, you know, we've got listeners, we've got people that, you know, finance is a big topic. And, you know, are there signs, is there patterns, are there certain things that, you know, something, here's what you should be aware of, here's what you should watch for, you know, what are you pretending not to know in your finances, for example? Are you having trouble having real conversations with your significant other? Are there some signs that people should look for that, or patterns that you've recognized that people should pay attention to that would draw their attention to you need to expand on your education?
Yeah, I would say a lot just has to, I would look at levels there, right? I think the first level we need to get everybody to is to a place of base security, right? Where they don't have to worry about a house over the head, where they have debt, at least to a minimum, like revolving debt and things, unnecessary debt, to a minimal level. Investment debt's another, but you know, make sure they have some emergency money set aside, making sure their home is food and stocked with supplies. It's amazing. I know you're experiencing very cold temperatures like we are here down as now, and it's amazing. Right before, you know, this thing that all the grocery stores will fill up, people taking all this food and stuff. It's like these are things we can prepare for early. So I think the base level needs. If we look at the hierarchy of human needs, the base level is physiological needs, food, shelter, water, basic security, and so forth. I think in modern day, that also includes emergency monies in case something happens. And that's really where we want to get people to go. If you're not there, if one of your listeners isn't there, it's emergency level, massive action is required. You need to get there. I want what's best for you, your family, and your community. You need to get there. You need to put a lot of massive action there. And I always see people working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and yet they spend 30 minutes a month on their finances, right? So they're putting all this money in to earn money, but yet nothing to manage their finances and so forth. So that's level one. Stage two, where I would still want some urgency on their part, is getting them some risk capital so they can actually invest either into business, other investments, whatever they may be interested in or their knowledge levels at. And I would say those, you know, that first level, I always encourage people to take massive action. But again, it's hard because oftentimes people at that level have been so beat up about their finances. They've made a few bad decisions early, and it sticks with them for many years. But yeah, I would say those two, you know, levels, if you're in those two levels, we need to put some more attention there and time. And I think a simple way to do it is just saying, hey, you know, you're working 40, 50 hours a week. How much time do you think is deserving of personal finance? You're spending all this time working. You're going to continue this way unless you address your personal finance. So how many hours a week can you put toward your personal finance? Even if it's an hour or two a week, there's things that can be done if we prioritize. Maybe it's negotiating the better credit card rate. It's a simple phone call. But where we see people starting to get some take more action is when they gain a little momentum. For those listeners that are stuck there, that, hey, I'm not in a secure position and I just am having a hard time getting moving, pick one thing to do, right? Maybe it's negotiating credit card. Maybe it's calling up and reducing a bill, canceling a subscription, those simple little easy things. If you have a $50 subscription that you haven't used, that's $600 a year, right? It sounds like $50 a month sounds little, $600 a year sounds big. Especially if you're making 60 grand a year, that's a big percentage of what you're earning. So taking those little actions, so you're getting momentum, and then hopefully that will carry them to that next stage. So I hope I answered that in alignment with your question, but that was what came to mind.
Yeah, no, I think it's perfect. It's interesting that when I was a young man had reached out to me, and I know that I was supporting, and I was talking to him, and we were going about his finances, and he's being challenged. He's got a really kind of challenging upbringing, et cetera. So he's got a story around it, and I get it all. And when I was talking to him about finances, I asked him the question about, are you carrying any credit card debt? And he said, yeah. He says, I got about $6,000 worth of debt that, I don't know what to do. So that was one part of the conversation. The other part of the conversation was he had learned, he'd read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, then he was starting to see that, something that I got to invest capital. I got to look at maybe being an entrepreneur. I got to kind of open up my eyes to what's going on. And he's saying, I want to look at what are the opportunities for investment. And, one of the things I said to him is I said, well, you've got this credit card debt. It was, like I said, it was about $6,000, I think is where his number was. And I said, do you know what you're paying for interest on that? And he said, I think 19%. And I said, well, consider this. And the strategy ultimately is that he transferred this balance into another credit card, which gave him 12 months of zero interest. I said, okay. So he said, now your commitment is to pay off that money you owe to that credit card, and pay it off in the next 12 months. Before the new interest rate charges in. And I said, for all intent and purpose, what it's worth is giving you a 19% return on your investment. If nothing else, you're not paying that interest. And that clicked for him. It's an interesting shift because in his world, he had no way of, dealing with that. All he was doing was kicking the can down the road. And I said, well, if you want to invest, this is something to consider, a way of looking at it. And so that was a big shift for him. And when you start to understand some of the mentality around people where they get stuck, and in his case, he's got no guidance. He doesn't have a father to kind of guide him along the way. It was a real eye opener for him to go, oh, really that math, I get it. I understand exactly what you're saying. And so he's on that journey right now, and we're checking in and we're doing some stuff. But to really look and say, well, how do I achieve what I break down into financial certainty or financial security, financial certainty, and then ultimately what people are searching for generally is what they would refer to as financial freedom. But if you look at financial freedom as the end goal, what are some achievable goals along the way? And right now, psychologically for him, if he could just get rid of that credit card debt, that would give him a much greater sense of security, if you will. So, there's all sorts of mental aspects to finance, isn't there? I'm sure that there's a part of it that you see, but I'm curious from your perspective. This young man that I had a conversation with, he's 22 years old. And, like every other kid that's within our school system, none of that stuff is ever taught. No, in any way, shape, or form. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, it's just as bad in the US, I think, as it is in Canada. Why don't we have that as part of a curriculum? Something at least basic.
Yeah, it's in that's a great guidance you gave him. And I think, young people need those mentors. So appreciative of what you did there. And it is such a basic, fundamental thing. I think teaching kids about money. We've been teaching the same subjects here in the US for over 100 years: English, science, math, in social studies, history, etc. And really at the high school level here, we have algebra, we have geometry. We have those in the single digits of people need that for work, right? In our 8th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade English, it's British and American literature. Nobody needs that. That's ivory tower education. I've never used it. Useless to me. We have sciences taught for 3 years, right? I mean, great if you're a scientist. Most people are. Less than a single digit, again, jobs in that space. So we're teaching subjects that are completely outdated. In fact, I'm doing a video on this. I have a report card when I graduated in 1991. I have the same report card from Derek, who we talked about earlier, who graduated last year, and I can match up the classes pretty much one for one. Now, he's a little smarter than me. He took more advanced math and so forth, but the same core, it's the same classes.
Yeah.
And back in 1991, the first website came out, 1991. A computer, this thing, was thousands and thousands of pounds. To have the computing power of this was thousands and thousands of pounds. I mean, AI, it might have been in some fantasy movies, but maybe Tron or something, but it was not a reality. Now it's a reality. We have chat. The world has changed. The subjects have not. If this was any type of private organization that's training their employees the same way for the last 32 years was our difference, 32 years training the same thing. What if FedEx and UPS still operated on the old system?
Mm-hmm.
it's very sad. It's a key thing we're trying to do is advocate for financial education in schools, because these kids are graduating with outdated skills. The majority will never need them. In the class that would benefit 100% of students, 100%, unless they're independently wealthy. So let's say 99.9%, with a few trust fund babies, but 99.9% of the student body would benefit from math, from a financial education over math. They would benefit from entrepreneurship education over other topics. They benefit from career planning. You graduate school here, you don't have a resume, you don't know how to interview, you don't know how to shake hand, look an interviewer in the eye. And when we talk about financial education, we include entrepreneurship and career planning, because you need money coming in to manage money. If you don't have that, there's nothing to manage, right? So it's a shame that we are teaching such outdated materials, and we know the consequences. These kids are graduating and making the same dumb mistakes that I made, right? Getting into college debt, getting their my first credit card. I was a waiter at a health food store, and they gave me like an $8,000 or $12,000 limit, right? And I was making, on my tab, it was like $4 an hour as a minimum wage. I was making a minimum wage trading at $8,000, right? And I made investments off that, which wasn't good. So I made some dumb mistakes. And there's a way we can prevent that, and something that the school system can do to ensure that every kid graduates self-sufficient and in a position to be a contributing member of society, and yet they're failing to do that. So that is a hot topic. I go on for hours on that. It does get me heated every time, but I think anybody that has the best interest in what, if we just ask ourselves, what can we teach in school to make sure these kids are protected, to make sure that these kids can live a happy, healthy life and work toward their dreams? I would say the majority of the subject matter that they're teaching across even borders, countries, the world, would be eliminated and replaced with financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and career education.
Yeah, and that is I guess it can be a pretty hot topic overall. If you listen, and only because I mentioned his name earlier, which is Kiyosaki, when he looks at the school system, of course, he is one of the biggest and loudest critics of the school system. In his world, when the school system was, I guess, we'll call it initiated, where they started to create this system, it was actually to educate workers. They didn't want to educate people that were smart in that regard. So again, that we can go down a rabbit hole in that conversation, but there's a fundamental that I think my observation now, this many years later, as I look back, what allowed me to create wealth, what allowed me to sleep at night most of the time, was the fact that we never, my wife and I have never lived beyond our means. We have not ever engaged in consumer debt, as much as we could probably afford a lot more than we've afforded over the years. We just weren't willing to try and pull the future into the present in a debt-based thought process, which of course, Canada and the US, especially with interest rates as low as they were for so many years, what was driving our economies was the fundamental fact that we were consumer driven. US productivity far higher than Canada, but at the end of the day, we were debt driven consumerism is what drove our economy. We're now feeling the effects of what happens when interest rates go above zero, and all of a sudden people aren't spending as much money. But ultimately, if we can teach kids one thing, and that is to not try and drag the future into the present vis-a-vis debt, to have, and I don't want to say to, put off, some kind of gratification or reward for achieving something. It's more a case of just live below your means. And if you can't afford it, then don't buy it. It's really that simple. But I think it's so complicated given what's going on in the world of social media and what some would call peer pressure and the haves and the have-nots. There's such a deep psychology behind all of that. And yeah, so that is an interesting aspect of what basic education could give people and give kids. What's your thoughts on that, Vince?
Yeah, I agree. Especially today, kids have, when I grew up, not to age myself, 50, we had TV ads, we had radio ads, billboards, right? Nowadays, advertising follows kids around, highly sophisticated ads, phones, interactions with the McDonald's and so forth, that they do cross promotions. It's displayed at the where things are bought. Really interactive, engaging promotions, really designed to facilitate either the kids bugging their parents to make a purchase, or the kids just wanting to buy things. So I think we have the rise of this highly sophisticated advertising that's really letting kids know, hey, you need to have this to be cool, to be happy, right? If you look at any of those commercials, it's a little concerning how they're presenting certain products to kids. In fact, we have a campaign that says stop advertising to kids under 8 because they can't discern commercial content from non-commercial content. The other area I think is a problem too is the integration with social influencers. I think it's great that these kids are out there doing things, but some of the biggest channels on YouTube are unboxing videos for kids, where kids will buy something or get a gift to unbox it, play with it. And also for teens, it's called hauling videos, where they'll go shop and show their haul. So those are some of the biggest channels out there for youth on those channels. Plus, they're seeing how these people live. We have traditional social media that takes the Joneses of trying to keep up with the Joneses in your neighborhood to a very wide level. And as humans, we feel we deserve what other people have that we consider equals. So it's driving them there. And all this is building up so that, hey, when they're adults, they receive no training to combat those things. So a big thing we work with parents on and their kids is that media literacy. So understanding how to evaluate ads, having parents have conversations with their kids, asking simple questions. Hey, what are they trying to convince you of? What are they trying to get you to buy? Who's it targeting? Right. So the kids are able to logically break that down. And I think when there's when we can shine the light of logic into an emotional state that they're trying to get you into, it can help people avoid problems and live within their means. I agree. The biggest issue today is living within one's means. And, I think there's external influences that are pushing people to live outside their means. And hopefully that's one simple way that the parents listening can get involved and make sure your kids are ready for this onslaught of advertising that will continue for a lifetime.
Well, it is such a challenge, isn't it? I mean, first off, the parents got to get it, let alone the kids. So in other words, the parents got to understand it at a really deep level in order for them to really relate and kind of push back, or at least give their kids a context for it. It is the old case of, going in debt to buy things that you don't need, to impress people you don't know, to seek some kind of joy or happiness outside of yourself, which we know doesn't exist. So ultimately, we seek that kind of gain or that feeling of accomplishment or whatever. Buying is all outside of who we are. And that the psychology behind that is pretty deep and challenging at best. Would be an understatement to what we have to deal with. At this point in my life, my daughters, I got grandkids, so I'm not in it like so many parents are today. However, I have a lot of compassion and empathy for parents. I have a lot of compassion and empathy even for our own daughter, who's raising, 2 young children, and what she has to deal with. And, it is a big challenge. So when I see, when I hear about individuals like you who are doing the work that you're doing, I go, well, there's lots of business out there. I don't know what the success rate of, can people really engage and, I guess, deal with the peer pressure of what they're seeing, to your point, whether it be on YouTube or what other social media platforms are out there. There's a psychology behind that. Is that something that you actually address within the programs that you teach, Vince?
Definitely. The psychology and the behavioral aspects are the biggest aspects of really what I think is the backbone of financial education. Personal finance isn't rocket science, right? We have to make money. We have to save money, and we have to, keep our expenses within moderation to be able to save money. And then we can get to a point where we can invest. But really, the holy grail is just being able to save money. If we just take it down to the simplest form, can you save money on a regular basis, meaning monthly, not where it's like you save, some money this month, next month you're in the hole, next month you're saving. No, can you save money on a regular basis? And is that growing consistently over time? I think that's the basic of personal finance. And it's not more complex than that. to do that, it takes income coming in. It takes minimizing our expenses. And once we get there, and we build up our emergency fund, now we can think about investing. Then it gets a little more complex, right? And then we get into some other things. But the backbone of that is just managing our expenses, earning money. The expense side of thing is largely behavioral. If we fail to address that, we're doing very little for people's finances. I can almost guarantee most people know how to budget. Most people know what good credit is and how to maintain it. And even if they don't know it, it's not like you need an entire year just on that, on building a good credit rating. You can do so in a handful of classes, but what takes a longer period is making those behavioral adjustments and those good habits. So something as simple as setting a system to where they're, living off a calendar, to where every 3 times a year they're checking their credit. I'm just making up, I give everybody the freedom to schedule, their checkups, whatever they're like. Maybe checking in on your budget quarterly. Maybe it's, reviewing your debt every other month, right? So getting in the habit of systematizing things so that we're taking some of the behavioral aspects out of it, automating or calendarizing, I made up that word, a lot of the basic components of personal finance, and putting the majority of focus oftentimes on that behavioral aspects that we see getting people off course. And typically when you look at somebody's budget for the first time, you can point out the areas that you see them maybe getting off course. Maybe you see 20 purchases for Amazon. Maybe you see certain things reoccurring where you can add up $400, $500, $600 a month onto wants as opposed to needs. And it seems simple, just cut that off, but it's built into their system. That's what makes them happy. It's a little joy in life. I want that coffee in the morning, right? So I think the behavioral aspects are the most challenging. And I think education classes are a good way to get the basics and set up structure and systemization. I think the coaching side is good for those that need that added support. I want that accountability. I want that, confirmation. I want that, somebody to celebrate my wins with and keep me focused. And I think that's where coaching really has a very positive impact, especially on those people that have ingrained habits that need help breaking them and they just don't know where to go. We look at, people that hire personal trainers, people that hire diet coach, all that. It's the same concept on finances. So those people that need support, I think that's the way to turn to on the behavioral side. But yeah, the psychology aspect, I concur with your thoughts. It's the number one predicator of somebody's financial health in many instances.
There's a story. I'll share a really brief story with you, but I'll go on to another point. So years ago, there was a entrepreneur, a man that I got to know. He was old to me. He was probably my age back then. But anyways, he owned a trucking company that was really successful. And, I asked him one day, I said, so, how do you manage all of this business that you've got, like this trucking company you got? You got a real thing going on. And I'd have been about 18 or 19 years old at the time. And he said, I just manage money really well. And there's another guy, another friend there, made some comment, and he goes, it's really simple, guys. He goes, you would probably picture this, you're at that age still. He says, I got 2 nails on my desk, that I stick paper on. And he said, on one nail is my invoices, and on the other side, on the other nail, I put all of my invoices that I'm invoicing for, so my receivables, and then on the other nails, all my payables. And it's really simple, guys. When your receivables isn't as high as your payables, you got to get back to work, or you got to cut back on those payables. It's not any more complicated than that. Everybody makes it more complicated. On that nail is what I'm invoicing. Here's what I'm paying, and those things got to balance. Nothing is more complicated than that. That's how he broke it down for me. And I always remember that sometimes we have a tendency to get really complicated in all of it, but at the end of the day, that's really what it is. Sadly, neither the U.S. or the Canadian government can do that simple of math, but that's
true.
that's another conversation, I guess. So, one of the things that in the space that, I've played in for many, many years in real estate investing, in a lot of the guidance that we give people is to get your financial house in order. So in other words, there's a phrase that I use, which is you can't steal in slow motion, which is only to say when deals show up, you got to be able to take action on those deals. You got to be able to write the offer. You got to be able to know where you're at financially in order to take advantage of those deals. So in other words, get your financial house in order. Sit down with a mortgage broker who's going to go through all of the stuff that you've got and really unpack where you're at. Now, I say that because whether you're a real estate investor or not, getting your financial house in order, unless you've got a reason, people will put that off. They'll ignore it. They really don't know where they're at financially. That's my sense of it. Am I talking out of school, or is that really kind of how you see and what shows up for you as well?
Yeah, that really is. And going back to my years, going back a few decades to my mortgage years, people would call up wanting to buy a home. They see it. They're planning on making an offer. They just need to get qualified. I'd be okay. Let's do it. Pull up their credit, 500 FICO score, which in the U.S. is well below what they need. How much do they have saved? $500, 50 grand in debt. It's like they did not have their financial house in order, and they had this dream. It's just they didn't prep in advance. And I think, the whole concept of being prepared for opportunity is key, and understanding what you need to tackle that opportunity. Something as simple as doing your own pre-qualification via simple calculations. Hey, how's your credit? How much money do you have? And how much are you earning compared to the housing payments? Very simple. That'll kind of put you in the realm. Do you qualify or not? And people didn't have that concept. And I saw where it cost people money. So I'd get calls where people would say, hey, this other person's giving me this rate, but they said, don't run their credit again because they're on a cusp of bad credit. And this person had excellent credit. So the other person lied to them so they didn't shop the rate, right? Mm-hmm. So I see many instances where I prevented that. Others, they never called me back. So maybe they went with that person. But I saw many instances of that where they were getting taken advantage of as well, just by not knowing the basics. I think, the majority of financial service people are good people. They're in it because they want to help. That's why I got into it. They're good people. They want to help. They want to make a living. They're honest and have high integrity. But there are some people that aren't good players out there. And we need to make sure that, people aren't relying just on salespeople for information, right? And when you go to anybody that's offering a financial service where their commission or income is tied to facilitating a transaction, and some people are good. They want to be, unbiased and give you great opinion, but maybe in the back of the head, hey, they rent on the office space and, things way up so that gray area could get moved a little bit. So I always tell people, hey, be as educated as somebody to have intelligent conversations with the financial professionals you'll deal with. So when those opportunities do arise, you're able to ask good questions. You're able to be prepared, and it's a joy to work with. And, every realtor I work with and mortgage broker, they love working with me because I bring everything there. I'm leading everything. They're just helping me facilitate the transaction. But they love working with me. I always tell them it's going to be the easiest money you make. Just here's your role. I'm going to take over the rest. But I think when you're in that position as well, they're more. They have extra time to give you the added guidance. When I moved out here to Dallas 3 years ago from California, I didn't know the area, and I told the realtor, "Hey, here's where I'm going to focus. I just need your expertise as far as the areas. Invest your time here. That's all I want is your time invested into this. I'll handle everything else." And so that's what she did. She wrote many reports. She told me about areas, gave me overviews, and that was what I needed to come here and get a place successfully. So I think, again, with knowledge and preparation, you're in position to take advantage of those opportunities.
Interesting. So you're one of those individuals that moved from California, one of the many thousands of people that have left California, mostly going to Texas and Florida. Interesting. But it kind of is in line with, financially, get the hell out of California, given what's going on there, right? So interesting time. So as we wind down, Vince, thank you for your time. But as we wind down, a couple things is, as you were speaking there, if we're giving somebody that's still listening and they're going, okay, what do I do next? What would somebody do? What is a kind of a next step for anybody who's saying, something, I procrastinated long enough. I got to get off my ass. I got to get my financial house in order. How would you suggest, or what would you suggest as a first step?
A first step always comes down to assessment, right? So where are you at financially, from a numbers perspective, from a net worth perspective, let's say, from a monthly cash flow perspective, are you positive, negative, from a debt perspective? So looking at the key barometers of financial health, where are you at across the board? What is most important, and also identifying what are your goals, right? Do you want to buy a home in a year? Do you want to, are you going to help your kid go to school? What are those goals? Because we need to match, between that, we need to massage it so they work together. And from that, then you can really start to craft that initial plan that we talked about earlier. What does that plan look like? Again, trying to simplify that. Hey, do you need to work on the income side? Do you need to work on the expense side? Do you need to work on the savings side, which is kind of a byproduct of the expense and income? Or are you more advanced where you need, you're looking at different investment opportunities, right? So somebody looking at investment opportunities maybe have different needs as far as their assessment. And then really tackling, hey, what's most important and urgent? So you can set actionable items that you do each week. I always suggest weekly, not monthly. Sometimes you get off pace or you forget, and when it's monthly, at least a few hours a week. At least a few hours a week. You're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. You need to commit at least a few hours a week toward money and learning more. And maybe you just need to gain knowledge, right? Maybe you don't know certain things, you need to gain knowledge. So what is it you need? What are you willing to commit time to? Add that to your calendar. Over 4, 5, 6 weeks, you'll start to gain momentum, and it's critical. You're following that path at least a couple months. That's where habits start to form and ingrain. I've been going to the gym since I was 15, 14. And so I always see every year, January, right, through the beginning of February, the first week, it's packed. We're double, 50 to 100% in capacity. And already it's been colder here. So I've already been seeing the numbers down. But that has to do with, not having a plan. So I think the key is not only establishing the initial plan, getting that on your calendar, setting a time for your action on those items, and realize some things will take longer. You may have, talk to my credit card company, something you'll do in a half hour, and you're on hold getting transferred for 2 hours. Sometimes it's frustrating. It's like, oh, forget it, right? You can adjust the outcomes. We can't guarantee the outcomes, but we can guarantee you're able to set aside time in your focus of that time. Now, the outcomes may mean that you have to adjust timelines and so forth. That's quite all right, right? Just keep taking action, avoid the frustration, and understand things will take time. But I think within a year, most people can get through, even if you're in a really tough financial position, most people can get through the majority of action items within a year that's needed to build a good foundation for the future. So it's a year of toughing things out with this extra work. There's always going to be some focus there, but when you get to a point where you can invest and see money grow, it gets more exciting when your accounts are going up and your debt's going down. It's exciting to open up those bills, right? Or the investment statement, right? When things are going opposite, when your investments are going down and your debt's going up, you don't want to look at it. I've been there. I never want to look at it. I'm like, damn, I got to toughen up, rip these open real quick, look at them. It's like, oh, damn, I went up again. So, those challenges are always going to persist, but we need to kind of fight through those and realize we don't have any, control over the outcomes, but how you manage your finances, we can just continue to work toward more positive things. And again, keeping those reasons in mind, your family, your goals, your community, I think are all ways that you can stay motivated, even when you don't want to get up in there and do things.
Fantastic. There's a phrase that I learned years ago, which at the time didn't make as much sense to me as it makes now, which is the more you manage your money, the more money you will have to manage. And it's such a great statement. And at the time, it didn't make much sense. They added a story to it later, which was a the story goes, a dentist who was paying a housekeeper $15 an hour, I think, or $12 an hour at the time. And 18 years later, on her death, they discovered that she had over $500,000 in savings and investments, and that dentist that had been paying her for that many years was that much in debt. So the better you manage your money, the more money you have, or the more you manage your money, the more money you have to manage, I thought was always a kind of an appropriate statement. So as we just finish up, wind down, a few quick, we just have a little bit of fun in terms of what we would call some rapid fire questions that are never really rapid fire, but we try it anyways, just for the sake of trying it. So quickly, Android or Apple?
iPhone, Apple.
Okay. You're on the right team, I think, there. Do you have a favorite movie? Favorite movie that you kind of stands out for you?
Really, I'm anything business focused where I see companies grow. I don't really have a necessarily favorite anything. I'm seeing things develop, whether it be a business, a company. I just watched that Uber miniseries on Netflix. Okay. I really enjoyed that. So those are the genre of movies I enjoy.
You dig it. You have a favorite band, favorite song, anything that stands out?
No, I mean, yeah, I'm a kind of old school rock. I was like the Guns N' Roses. I like the Motley Crue. You know, I used to have the longer hair in high school. You get the idea where I was then.
That's great. Favorite swear word?
I work with too many youth. I'm going to say damn.
Yeah, that's all you got. Well, that's good. No, listen, I get it all over the map here on this show. I'm always a little bit, because I'm a little bit more colorful with my language sometimes, and then I have guests that come along and go, "Nah, I don't swear." I go, "What the hell? Yeah. What the fuck are you talking about?"
There we go. I have this is my studio, and in my room I have the office. The office doesn't have any cameras, no microphone, so I'm free to use the cuss words I enjoy. But in here, it's the cuss-free zone. So this is my angelic area where I'm a presenter. But I have no problem with swearing. It's just, I serve a lot of kids. I try to teach them not to build the habits that I've developed over years.
When you get to the gates, what if there is a God? What do you want to hear it say?
Hey, you've done something good. You help people out.
Fantastic. And final question of today, anyways, Vince, what are you grateful for?
I'm really grateful for my parents. A huge opportunity with having them, family. It's just I know a lot of people don't have that blessing, and I did, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's fantastic. Well, I am always grateful for the opportunity to have conversations with my guests such as yourself. And like you, I am very grateful for my parents. I'm blessed because my mom is 95 and she's still here with us. And I love having conversations with her. And I think that's fantastic. And certainly I am blessed and always grateful for my wife, Stephanie, and all that she does. So, Vince, thank you so much for your time and the insights you've shared today. It's appreciated.
Pleasure. Great talking to you. Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. If you found value in the podcast, please take the time to rate and review and share with others. Share with your friends. As it is my goal to always improve and to provide the highest value for you, the listener. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions you'd like answered, please email me at ceo@reincanada.com. That's ceo@reincanada.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, Patrick out.